Yeah, we are back with you on a Friday in Southern California. Good to be with you. The Brown Beauty is back on duty on the powerofvoices.com. This is the Jesse T Show, and we are live. And we are happening on a Friday right here, right next to the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful land of paradise called Los Angeles in Southern California. Hopefully you're not getting a lot of feedback right now on the phone. I'm experiencing a lot of feedback right here, and it's really strange. But maybe we can clean that up a little bit. All right, that's a little bit better. Appreciate that very much. Hey, we are good to be with you today, and you're good to be with us today. We've got a great show lined up for you. It's the Jesse T Show, and it's live at 5 right here at thepowervoices.com. Download that free app. I always remind you that way you can stay in touch with us 24/7, and we certainly like you to do that because we've got lots of great programs here. We're trying to hook up live stream right now here in the studio in a undisclosed location, and it's good to have you along. Noel Martin is already checking in with us, and so hopefully we can get our live stream audience up here as we tinker around with this and get the show going. Hey, this is like I got my hat on today, right? And this is like New York style. This is Popeye Doyle, you know. Remember Gene Hackman in The French Connection? He wore a hat just like this, right? Popeye Doyle, kind of Popeye Doyle style like this, right? Right? That was like New York style. I dug that hat when I was a kid and I saw it. Anyhow, that's like New York style. So I've been wearing it like Popeye Doyle style. If you've never seen that movie, The French Connection, you got to see it. They have one of the greatest chase scenes underneath the subway in New York City. It's unbelievable. It's almost as good as Steve McQueen's chase scene in San Francisco from the movie The Bullet, which is considered the greatest film chase scene of all time. A Charger against a Mustang. Oh, man, it was just fantastic. But that chase scene in New York, boy, that was a great scene in the movie French Connection with Gene Hackman being the star. That's Popeye Doyle New York look. Here's the Chicago look. You ready? Here's kind of the Chicago look. A little bit more Chicago. You know, that's kind of a little more Chicago look, right? And then, I like doing that look at night, wearing a look that's kind of like that at night, right? With this side of the brim up like that. And that's kind of the Chicago look. I like to wear this look in the daytime because right here, I get too oily. It's that Italian Spanish skin that I have here. So, but at nighttime, kick it down like that, right? It's kind of cool. You know what I mean? And then there's the California look. Californians, they got that brim all the way down because the sun's coming from every which way all the time, 24/7. It seems like the sun never goes down. So anyway, it's good to have you along as we design our fashion show for you here on a fun Friday in Southern California. Not going to be talking too much politics because I am just gone, done. I'm burned out. That's it. It's just becoming a big mud throwing contest. Everybody knows that I'm a Trumpster and I'm going to vote for Trump, and that's it. And it's just mud here, mud there, mud everywhere. I mean, it's terrible. Now the mud's getting rocks in it that you can't see. And pretty soon there's going to be, knives in that mud rock knife throwing contest. I mean, it's just going to get how dirty. We ought to run a little gambit going on here, a little inside gambling, right? And we ought to put some odds up to see how dirty it's going to get in the next few weeks. How dirty can they get with each other? I mean, that's the most amazing thing here is what it's turned into. And what it's turned into is, well, it's really a disgrace when you think about it because it's the destruction of our republic. It's the destruction of how we know how to govern, how we have governed ourselves for almost 300 years. And since going back to the revolution in the days of our forefathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, it's just it's deplorable. I mean, if you really want to talk about deplorables, what's deplorable are all of them, and how we as a citizenry allow them and allow these people to represent us. I mean, if you think about it. Noel Martin, hey, keep cutting in and out. Bad weather on East Coast. Check back in a few minutes, she says. Whoa, it must be blowing pretty hard and raining hard on the East Coast today. What I should do is I should reach down and perhaps what I should do, instead of cut in and out, I think I'll plug in a secondary microphone into that phone there. But while I do that, I want to play you something. We have it ready to go back at the studio. And I want to play you something from a Supreme Court Justice, uh, Judge uh, Judge Souter. Now, Judge Souter retired. He retired. A lot of justices, they have the job for life once they're nominated and they pass the process and they're ratified. They have they're allowed to stay there for life. It's a lifetime appointment. That's why it's so very important as to who we pick to represent us in the legal branch. But nevertheless, Judge Souter is retired. He didn't want to spend his whole life there. Let me plug that in there like this. I'll probably give you a little bit better volume. I'll drop it off here like this and put this one up there. It's probably a little bit better volume on Facebook.com/Jesse Terrero. But Judge Souter was recently on MSNBC, or a interview was played by the MSNBC host, Rachel Maddow. I believe that's how her name is pronounced. I've never agreed with much of her opinions or commentary for that part. But this is very good, and I applaud her and the people at MSNBC for playing this, because for so many years I've said that our population has been dumbed down. Our population, starting with kindergartners and in school for probably almost 2 generations now, the Generation Xers and the Millennials. It really started in my generation around the mid-1970s, when, well, at least that's when I noticed it, when I was 14 years old. But this dumbing down of the population, little by little by little every year, this indoctrination that has shifted, this lack of being tough on kids, this political correctness. I call it poop and crap, right? And so most folks are just, you're just crazy. You're just a nut. You're just a conspiratory person. You just, you just think everything is to blame on some mystical, magical force that nobody can see. Well, Judge Souter, in this interview that we're going to play, and I want you to watch it, those that can watch it, on thepowervoices.com, YouTube Live, The Power Voices, our channel there, on Bamboozle, Stream Up, and UPeak, as well as we can't get you up on live stream. Having a little bit of problem with that. But on Facebook.com/ The Power Voices. For those of you that can see it, you'll hear it here with us. Check it out, because what he has to say is something that I've been talking about for, gosh, it's got to be probably since 1987. We're talking a long time, maybe 30 years. And he talks about it in such a wonderful way. And this is a schooled, educated man. I mean, after all, he was a United States Supreme Court justice, the finest of the fine in terms of the intellect of how he sees things. So I know Lee's back in the studio. If you could get that going, Lee, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Right here at ABTV Live. Maybe we don't have it up and hooked up and ready to go yet, but hopefully he'll be able to get that running there, or perhaps it might be playing already on Facebook.com/The Power of Voices. I'm not quite sure. So let me kind of talk a little bit about what he had to say, since we are having a little bit of a technical problem there. That sometimes happens, when we're broadcasting from a remote location. Things don't always go as well as we want them to plan, no matter how well we position and check them and double check and triple check. But as soon as you can get that up, Lee, let me know so that we can get that rolling. I hope that he is there with us on our Skype setup. I'm going to see if I can contact him while we talk about that right now. So anyhow, Judge Souter was talking about how he's not worried about certain Republicans. He's not worried about Democrats. He's not worried about who's in power in Congress or the Senate. He's not worried about these things. He's not worried about the breakdown of our society. He's not worried. He feels that we'll be able to work through it in some capacity and in some way. So what he was talking about in this interview, that hopefully we're going to be able to get and get up. We might not be able to get it up. What he was talking about, and I invite you to go check it out. It's on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Jesse Terrero, about halfway down in the timeline. He was talking about that as a society loses its understanding of basic civics. And I don't know if you recall, sometimes I bring out the United States Constitution and the amendments and I read them. And he was talking about that as a society loses its basic understanding of its civics, as it's not being taught in schools today. And they stopped that decades and decades ago. He's saying that as that takes place, what happens is you stop understanding and knowing who to blame for problems that arise. Because if you don't know the basic understandings of how our government works, both on the local level in your city or your town, and then on the statewide level, and then on the federal level, and then on the world scene, if you don't have an idea of how these things function, when something goes wrong, how are you going to know, one, how to fix it, first off, and not even how to fix it, who to blame for it? Where is the problem, and how is that problem in terms of, can that problem be fixed? If you don't know where to go find who created the problem and how to deal with that problem, I'm calling Lee right now, and how to deal with that problem, then hold on a second now. Hey, Lee, can we get that video up?
Yeah, that's ready.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's great. All right, now this is the video I talked about with Judge Souter. Listen to it, guys, and watch it right here on AVTV Live. Thanks, Lee.
Is that I think some of the aspects of current American government that people on both sides find frustrating are in part a function of the inability of people to understand how government can and should function. It is a product of civic ignorance. What I worry about is a remark that Benjamin Franklin made, and Susan Leahy quoted Jefferson at the beginning about how an ignorant people can never remain a free people. Democracy cannot survive too much ignorance. Franklin, in effect, had a comment to which the Jefferson comment is a kind of an answer or a response. And you probably have heard this, but it bears repeating. Franklin was asked by someone, I think, on the streets of Philadelphia shortly after the 1787 convention adjourned, what kind of government the Constitution would give us if it was adopted. And Franklin's famous answer was, a republic if you can keep it. You can't keep it in ignorance. I don't worry about our losing Republican government in the United States because I'm afraid of a foreign invasion. I don't worry about it because I think there is going to be a coup by the military, as has happened in some other places. What I worry about is that when problems are not addressed, people will not know who is responsible. And when the problems get bad enough, as they might do, for example, with another serious terrorist attack, as they might do with another financial meltdown, some one person will come forward and say, give me total power and I will solve this problem. That is how the Roman Republic fell. Augustus became emperor not because he arrested the Roman Senate. He became emperor because he promised that he would solve problems that were not being solved. If we know who is responsible, I have enough faith in the American people to demand performance from those responsible. If we don't know, we will stay away from the polls. We will not demand it. And the day will come when somebody will come forward and we and the government will in effect say, take the ball and run with it. Do what you have to do. That is the way democracy dies. And if something is not done to improve the level of civic knowledge, that is what you should worry about at night.
Wow. I mean, wow. Do you realize what he just said? It is so powerful what he just said right there. We're talking about a United States Supreme Court justice who's retired, Judge Souter. We're talking about a guy who was schooled and educated beyond the normal education that anybody gets, even beyond all judges and attorneys. They sit around all day long and read history and read how our country was formed. They have unlimited access to information. What he just said there's a couple of things in that passage that he just said that just have to stop you dead in your tracks. If it doesn't, then you really aren't much of an American, in my opinion. What he said there was, one, he thinks there's going to be a military coup in this country at some point. And he doesn't worry about that if we have a basic understanding of civics, which they don't teach anymore. Civics is not taught like it was in my generation. This is why you see some of those video programs from guys on the late night talk shows on network TV and such go out with a microphone and ask the most simple of questions from people from an age bracket from about 18 to about 45. Just the most simple questions of current events, of importance, and history. Basic American history. And time again, people can't answer them correctly. In fact, it's a surprise when somebody does. This is the loss of civics. This is the loss of the basic understanding that Judge Souter is talking about. And as he quoted Benjamin Franklin, the Constitution in our country will create a republic. And if we can keep it, and you can't keep it with I'm going to be not PC. I'm not going to be poop and crap. I'm going to be straightforward. You can't keep it if we have a bunch of dumb, stupid idiots who are uneducated, who have no caring or understanding or no desire says that wasn't working, and they were concerned about losing their funding. NASA was the largest funded program, outpacing the military funding. Now they're almost nothing from the United States government. So he says he was contracted again. And the incident of Apollo 13, the one that Tom Hanks played, he says that was a contrived, created fabrication in a film studio. Stanley Kubrick, no reason for him to lie. He's at the end of his life. No reason for him to spread truth. One of the best directors Hollywood has ever produced. Doesn't need the flash, doesn't need the money, doesn't need the accolades and awards, and he couldn't get them anyway because they kept him under silent treatment. So, interesting. Conspiracies. They put a lot of food for thought in your brain. There's a conspiracy about giants. In Genesis, the first 6 books of Genesis, you'll find all kinds of different things. You'll find Nephilims, you'll find Anunnakis, you'll find Enos and Enoch and Enu. You'll find these names. Where do they come from? They're in the first part of the Old Testament. Okay, Genesis. They talk about giants in Genesis. They talk about creatures that were much more and massive than the ones that wrote the book of Genesis later on. They talk about beings coming from the sky, flying apparatuses, stuff coming from the sun, coming down. They talk about all this stuff in the book of Genesis. I remember when I went to Village Christian School, I read that and I remember I said to my mother, I'm like, 6, 7, 8 years old, learning how to read, and the teacher would read a lot of stuff to us. And we read that, or she read it, and we listened, and we read along, and it stimulated my imagination. And I remember I asked my mother, I said, as a 6 or 7-year-old could, can you explain this to me? My mother said, there's all kinds of creatures that lived on this planet for billions of years. Don't worry about it. Just read it. It's a good story. You'll get something out of it. She was such a wise woman, I swear. So I enjoyed the heck out of it. And then we got to the begatting. Oh, they begat this, and they begat that, and they begat this, and they begat that. Saying hi to Betty Cooper. Hey, Betty. They begat this, and they begat that, right, in the book of Genesis. And I remember I went home and I asked my mom, I said, what does begatting mean? I think I was about 10, right? 8, 9, 10. Lee Cameron, hey, Lee, what are you doing, buddy? My mom had to explain to me begatting. I guess that's kind of where I got the first, story about the birds and the bees. That's the only way she could explain to me begatting. And essentially, that's what it was, right? So the English Torah, or this Jewish Torah, is where the Old Testament comes from. That's their Bible, the Torah, okay? Written, in pieces about 4,000 years ago, maybe 5, somewhere in that area. Well, there's a civilization that was actually around the planet Earth before then. It's up where they're fighting right now, where they're fighting the ISIS, psychotic killers of Islam, jihadist warrior, a-holes, right? It's right up there where Turkey and Syria and Iraq kind of come together. That was known as the Assyrian Empire. And prior to that, it was known as the Syrian Empire, okay? And that empire went back not just 4,000 or 5,000 years, it went back tens of thousands of years, okay? Archaeologists prove this over and over. So back in the 1930s, they uncovered these things called the Sumerian tablets from Samaria, which is where the Assyrian, and Sumerian empires were tens of thousands of years ago. I meant to say Sumerian, not Syrian. All right, and these Sumerian tablets had these etchings on it like the hieroglyphics in Egypt, but they were much older. And they were scratched in rock and very clear. So there was a guy, his name was Zachariah Sitchkin, or Sitchkin. It's pronounced either way. I mess that guy's name up all the time. I mess my name up all the time. And he spent his whole life then, up until he was well into his 90s, deciphering this language because there was no language on the planet Earth that related to or he could use. So he spent his whole lifetime, he and his archaeological team and linguistics experts and ancient peoples of antiquities that understand that stuff of the ancient peoples from around the planet, trying to figure out what this language was so that they could start reading these very old tablets that they had tested, which were tens of thousands of years before the Dead Sea Scrolls, before Sanskrit, which is considered one of the oldest forms of writing on the planet Earth, before India, before China, before anywhere. They wanted to figure out what this stuff is saying. So he spent his whole lifetime. I believe he deciphered something in the area of about 30,000 words. And that's just a piece of these many tablets that they found. And other people have taken on his work. He's passed away now. Passed away about 10 years ago. I got fascinated with this guy. He wrote about 20 books or 30 books or something like that. I read everything I could on this guy. And then when the internet came up, it was fascinating stuff. So in the book of Genesis, they talk about this concept called Anunnaki. Who are the Anunnakis? Well, on the Sumerian tablets, one of the first words he deciphered was Enu and Enoch and Anunnaki and Anu. And they were able to decipher more. So the crux of this is he was able then to read what these tablets were giving in information. And it is mind-blowing stuff. You've got to check it out. It's absolutely mind-blowing stuff. The Sumerian tablets say, and they take a history that goes back 400 to 500,000 years of educated history back 400 to 500,000 years, and they tell this story. I'm going to break it down and make it real short because this thing goes on forever and ever and ever. So they tell this story, saying hi to Carla Short. What's happening, Carla? And they tell this story, and this story is this, and that is, it's an ancient civilization in Sumeria that discussed how we became who we are, how human beings actually became human beings. It talks about creatures, extraterrestrials, creatures that have come down to Earth and visited Earth and came out of the sky. They couldn't explain how they flew, but they had flying ships of some sort that came down out of the skies, the sun, by way of the sun. And that's where the concept of the sun being the center of the universe came from. The Son of God. Okay? The sun god, Ra, in Egypt, in ancient Pharaoh times, right? The Ra, which is the sun, okay? All right, and all the ancient antiquities and societies have a sun god. They all worshipped the sun, every one of them. The Aborigines, the Incas, every one of them. The Druids, the ancient Oriental societies, the ancient Indians, they all worshipped the sun. Okay, so it talks about that these creatures came from the sun, out of the sky, and they came in ships, and they left one person on ground and one person in the sky to govern the planet. And they came because their planet was dying, because they need gold dust or the chemicals of gold in their atmosphere, and they had been creatures that have gone around the galactic universe for millions of years. Okay? And they had the ability to get this gold dust out of planets that had it so that they could put it into their atmosphere and their planet would survive. in other words, they survived on gold dust as a barrier from their sun, like we have our atmosphere, we have our ionosphere. Okay? All right, so they talked about that these creatures come around every 3,300 years. Okay? And that they live to be 30,000 years old. Okay? And Anunnaki was the king. And he left two sons here, Enu and Enoch. Okay? One for the sky, one for the earth. And they were giants. These people were giants. They had humanoid features, looked like you and me, but they were giants, 30 feet tall. Can you imagine 30 feet tall? That's 10 yards. That's 5 times the size of a 6-foot man. Can you imagine the weight, the strength, the power, the size? And they started to do DNA splicing with the creatures in Africa. Right. Northern Africa. Because they found gold in the Mesopotamia region, in the water, the Red Sea. Okay? But not enough. So if you look at a satellite picture of Africa, southern Africa is potholed like craters on the moon. Potholed with millions of these round, perfectly round craters of all sizes. And those were gold mines. And what they did is they created DNA splicing with the humanoids that were here. And after a million years or so, hundreds of thousands of years, they were able to create the proper entity called Homo sapiens. See, I've never thought that evolution fit the whole story. And I've never thought that creationism fit the whole story. They just don't both have all the logic in place. Okay? I've always thought there had to be something else. And the Sumerian tablets talk about this. It's fascinating stuff. You ought to check it out. It's fascinating. Anyhow, here's the kicker. They have found the skeletons and the bones of these creatures. Because when they created the humanoids, the Homo sapiens, they also started to mate with the Homo sapiens. That's part in how they created Homo sapiens. Right? And so with that, they created a race called the Nephilims. The Nephilims were about 9 to 10, 12 feet, 15 feet tall. Okay? And those are in the Bible. And they think that Goliath was a Nephilim from the Philistine area, from the empire of the Philistines. Okay? And he was a baby. He wasn't a big guy. Now, that's what they think. That's why he was so tall. And in the Bible, Goliath is talked about being certain height, like 8 to 9 to 10 feet. Okay? So, it's fascinating stuff. When they found bones in the American Northwest, in Argentina and South America, in Central America, in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East, all around the world. They found these bones, and they've been finding them since the 1870s. The pharaohs themselves are depicted as being taller than the normal people, because they were. Their gods, the pharaohs of the Egyptians in the ancient antiquity, the pharaohs in their hieroglyphics, it shows flying creatures that were giants. The Incas have it. The Aztecs have it. The Aborigines have it. The Druids have it. The ancient Middle Eastern societies have it. The Chinese have all the same depictions. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing stuff. And the Smithsonian and the English London Museum have these bones. We're talking about creatures that were 30 feet high. Unbelievable, huh? Is that a conspiracy theory? I don't know. It's fascinating, though. So when you start looking at the information that we're given and that we're raised to be with, many times it's not the information that's right or true or complete. It's sort of like a half-truth tell, right? A half-truth tell. I used to tell my kids, don't tell me any half-truths. Either lie to me completely and make me believe that that lie is right and convince the heck out of me. It's going to be really hard to do that. Or tell me the truth. It's a lot simpler. But half-truths? Nah, we're going to get in a lot of trouble here because that ain't going to be a good enough lie. And that's what's happening with our society today. Because we don't have all the information. We don't have, as a general population, the inquisitive mind, like Judge Souter talked about, and Benjamin Franklin talked about. We don't have a basic understanding of just one topic matter, and that's civics in our society to keep our government in check. This is why we are going down the path we're going. We are low on information. We believe what we see, and what you see is not what you get. We believe what we hear, and what you hear is not always what it is. The only way that you can know the truth is to dig for it, like those archaeologists did. Dig for the truth and read and become educated for the rest of your life. Never stop your education process. Then and only then can we hold our companies. Then and only then can we hold our government representatives to the brimstone and fire. Otherwise, they're going to deal us a plate of poop. And we're going to eat it like it's chocolate ice cream. And that's what's happening right now to America's great republic. I challenge you, each and every one of you that live in California, read this book. This is our every proposition, pros and cons. It's 122 pages. I'm sorry, it's 222 pages. They know that you're not going to read 222 pages, Californians. And I'm sure that your state has the same type of setup. 222 pages. Everything that we're supposed to be voting for when we go in to fill in our little punch card. This translates down to this. This translates down to this. This translates down to this. If you don't read this, how can you know how to fill out this? And that's what leads to the end of our republic. Much smarter people than me, cats with alphabet soup in front of their name and behind their name, tell us this. See, civics, the most important thing you can do to protect the United States of America, besides pick up a rifle and join the military and fight for our right to continue to exist on this planet the way we want to. This is the only way that you can make a difference. But if you're not willing to understand 222 pages, and when you have a question, seek out somebody that can help you. Go on the internet. Figure out what that one word means, because that one word can change the whole understanding for you. Today I wanted to talk about conspiracies. And we covered a couple of them. Of course, there's the murder of JFK. Terrible. I've been there, stood at the X. Lots of conspiracies about that. There's conspiracies about, the black nobility of Europe, the Committee of 300, Rex 84, Agenda 21, Jade Helm 15, Area 51, which is a deception, because there's really Area 47 and Area 15. The deep underground military bases, dumb, as deep as 4,000 feet deep. Under Denver International Airport. They rose that airport's elevation when they started building it 250 feet to 300 feet higher than what it naturally was on the topography before they started. Why? Why? Because they had to put all the dirt that they were digging down below it. Many believe that there's a deep underground military base right below Denver International. They had to put the dirt somewhere. So there's lots of conspiracies. Conspiracies are the edge of truth, but should stimulate you to go dig for the truth and see something in a different way and just don't get it. The information you get, like a lapdog. Because what you're getting, and what I learned in law school, what you're getting, and I'm not an attorney, okay? I got out of that place. But what you're getting is you're getting somebody's interpretation. It is not always as it seems. Nothing happens per chance. Nothing happens per chance. It's a Friday in Southern California. I'm on the search right now for Dan the Man the Package. We're going to go out and do something crazy tonight and get some mischievous problems and trouble and have some fun and do the things that we do together on a weekend. Hey, you have a good weekend and a safe one too, okay? It's the Brown Beauty, who's always on duty, Jesse Terrero, on ABTV Live and thepowerofvoices.com and Digital Broadcasting TV Network and our digital global radio network. Combine the forces, 2 for 1, you get me, Jesse T. As you enter the world, according to Terrero, I release you, my friends, to have a great weekend. And hopefully, today's show led you to think a little bit more, because that's after all what we want to do. Inform you and entertain you in ways that only we can do it, right here on Power Voices and ABTV Live. Live at 5, Monday through Friday. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, baby. I let you go. From the world, according to Terrero, you are straight on the spot and straight on the point. The Brown Beauty is off duty. Let's take our country back.